Having completed all of our tabs, or indeed amended those tabs that we wish to, we can now go into Generate Reports. And we're presented with this screen. It's asking us if we wish to generate the reports. Clearly we do in this particular case, so we press yes. And you can see here that what it has done, it's saying that the system has now recognized that we wish to generate the report, and what you will see down here is an entry which is the worksheet that we've called, the date that we actually started this activity, the date that we finished. You can see I've taken a little while to do this, and the fact that it is now generating the reports. At this point we now have two options. We can either come out of the system if we're particularly busy and go back into our email system, and as soon as the reports are generated, an email will be sent to you with the reports attached. Or failing that, we can go back up to your entries and refresh this screen and keep doing that until we see that the reports have actually been generated. I'll explain in a few moments what these other functions are for, but for the moment let's just go in and view the reports that have been produced. So we can see that we have a summary statement, profitability statement, cash flow, and the ability to actually be able to recall our previous data. Now in a minute we'll go in and we'll have a look at these individual reports. These reports are actually produced in PDF format, but I'll explain a little bit more about these in a few moments. So let's just go back in and look at the function of these other buttons. I can actually now duplicate these reports. So supposing I've actually produced this set of data and produced the reports, but I now wish to change the data to produce a new set of reports. I can do it by actually pressing the duplicate entry button, and you can see what it's done here is to say that I have successfully duplicated the entry. So what this has done is to create an entry, the duplicate entry, and in order to prevent myself actually being confused, I can now rename this by simply typing in the new name and pressing rename, and it will have done this. Now the whole point of doing this is so that if I've got a set of data against my original set of reports and I wish now to change some of the data to produce new reports, I can actually do this. So what I've done here is to produce a new version of the data, and I can go back into data entry and change this. So let's just supposing I wanted to change the start of the financial year. I can now do this, bearing in mind now I don't have to type in next, although I can do. I can save this tab and it has told me that I've successfully done this. So I can now go into each one of these individual tabs and actually change the data as I choose to and save it, and then subsequently I can position the cursor down the bottom here on Generate Reports, and you can see it comes up with the screen that we had before. I can say yes please generate report, and what it's done, can you see it's actually moved from my incomplete entries, because I've now completed the data and actually producing the reports, and it's now producing the report as we have done previously. And just flip up now to your entries, come back down again, and here we go. It has actually produced the report, so I can now go in and view these reports, and this will actually now give me the amended data and the reports against the amended data. Okay, let's just look at the last one of these buttons. I've shown you how to use duplicate, view reports, if we look at delete, this enables me to delete an entry, and all I do is to click on the delete button. The system then asks me, am I sure I want to delete? And you can see here that it has now told me that I've successfully removed that version, and you can see that it's gone from the list. Just to complete this section on reports, I'd like to show you how you can start entering data and then break off and then return to complete the data entry activity. So, as before, we now enter a new worksheet, and create the link. So this is now actually going to create for us a new worksheet, and we can now start inputting data. Now let's just say at this particular point I need to break off and do something around the setting, so I merely save the entry and it tells me that it's saved. And if I then go back into your reports, you can see that what it has done, it has actually set something in incomplete entries. In order then to return to the worksheet that I'm trying to set up, I merely press the Set to Working Version button and then back into my data entry, and you can see what it's done. It's actually picked up the previous information, and I can now go on and add anything that I choose to. When all the tabs are complete, or those tabs that I wish to complete are completed, I merely then go back into Generate Reports. You can see it's saying here I've not completed all of the tabs, but that might be quite legitimate. It may well be that I don't want to put any data in for property assets, say. Okay, so all I then do is to just say I want to generate the reports, and we go back into this screen. You can see that the temporary input of data has now moved, and I'm now completing the actual reports here. And in the same way, your entries, and you can see it's now produced the reports. I would now like to run through the various reports that the system produces. As you can see, we have 3 reports: summary, profitability statement and cash flow, and then here we have a copy of the data that you put into the system. Okay, so let's now have a look at the summary statement. So click on the button, and you can see that this is now brought up in PDF format with all the usual toolbars. So we can resize the screen, we can print, save, all the standard commands. So let's just resize this, perhaps just bring it up a little more. And here you will see the first of the reports in the summary statement. It's perhaps worth saying that the summary report produces overviews of the key business parameters, which you can see here. We've called it the key ratios, the profitability statement, the cash flow statement, and the staffing statement. So you can get an overview on how your nursery is performing without looking at the detail. Now, as you'll see here, the key business parameters, or as we've called it, the key ratios, contains information which I think is pretty self-explanatory. But for example, it will give you the average income per child. Okay, if we just page down now, you will see that we actually come to the summary of the profitability statement. Again, self-explanatory, and as you can see, this has been input for a full 3-year period. The next summary that we come to is that of the cash flow. Again, self-explanatory. I would ask that you don't place too much attention to the numbers. These are merely sample data that we've put in, and here we come to and here we see the staffing reports. This is showing us what the theoretical staffing levels are as calculated by the system compared with the actual staffing levels that you have input into the system. And as you can see, this is actually running over a 3-year period. Okay, turning our attention now to the profitability statement. Let's just resize that as we did previously. And you can see that what this is doing is giving us a view on the income. It then gives us a view on the costs, the direct costs, and the operating costs associated with your nursery. And if I can just get it lined up here, it then will give us a view on the cumulative profit and loss that the nursery is making. And it will do this for the 3-year period. So here we can see we've got the figures in year 2 summarized by quarter, and the figures in year 3 down here summarized annually. Okay, if we now just move on to the cash flow statement, resize again, and here you can see, as its name implies, a view on the receipts and the payments, and then at the bottom here the flow of cash. Now again, I would just ask that you bear in mind that this is just representative data and is not a live nursery. Again, one can see that this is then available for year 2 and for year 3. Okay, just moving now to the final button here, the original data. As you may recall earlier, I said that this was a copy of the data that we had input. So if we just now resize this, and you can see here we've got the General Assumptions tab, and this is just merely, as I said before, a copy of the data that we've input. By clicking on this button, you can see we can now bring up all of the other tabs that we have input. I can either do it by selecting a particular tab here, or I can position the cursor here to bring up the information.